Welcome to the Movie Madhouse. I'm Rob.
I'm James.
I'm Jason.
And I'm Benner. Welcome back. I've been invited back
Yeah.
quicker than I ever thought I would be. So glad to be here, guys. Nice to see everyone again.
I gotta say, I think that's the quickest turnaround for a guest. 2 weeks,
I think so.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
unless you lump Jason into that because he's been on for 6 years?
Yeah. I'm like a barnacle. I came for episode 5 and just never left.
Yeah. So today is our debate, and here's what I'm going to do because these guys are.
Hold on. You're doing this. You're doing it all wrong, Rob.
I am.
You're doing it all wrong. Yeah, it's not. This isn't. Oh, today's our debate. No, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble.
There
with
we
the great
go.
Suicide Squad debate of 2020.
Yeah, no pressure, you two. We're hyping this up pretty good.
Clearly.
No pressure, but the future fate of Suicide Squad viewership will rest solely on this debate.
Okay, so Jason, you got the itinerary. Why don't you start us off?
So again, we're debating Suicide Squad. James in favor with Benner against. This will get heated. We're going to be discussing on 4 different topics: the story, the characters, the connection to the DC expanded universe, and then we can touch on the upcoming sequel. So, since Benner is the guest here, we'll let him start. Since I think your exact words were you hate this film.
Yeah.
Let's start with the story. Just quickly before the quick synopsis: the Suicide Squad members, which are Harley Quinn, Deadshot, Killer Croc, Captain Boomerang. Am I missing anybody? Fly.
Probably.
Slipknot, Rick Flag, Diablo.
We don't talk about Slipknot. Come on now.
And Enchanted, right? Yeah.
Have some Canadian pride.
Well, it's not that. It's the fact that he's in the movie for all of 10 seconds.
Still, you got a prominent Native Canadian actor in the movie.
Okay. Oh, all right. Slipknot. So they get voluntold to perform a mission. There are bombs in their heads. They have to go save a high-value target while there's some mysterious force destroying. Is it New York? I forget. What city is it? Do we even know?
Midway City, right? Midway City,
Yeah.
which is
Midway City. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's your basic synopsis. So Benner, we open with you. What was wrong with the story in your eyes?
Okay, so I'm going to preface this. Just going to start by saying a couple of things. Is that just for anyone watching, as well as you guys as well, is that I'm not a Marvel guy or DC guy. I'm a good movie guy. Okay, so I don't have a hatred on for DC just because I love Marvel movies and vice versa. Right? They both made good movies. They both made bad movies, in my opinion. It just so happens that Suicide Squad, it might be the worst movie they've made under the DC banner, next to Justice League. So, but before I saw Justice League, this was the worst movie I'd seen under the DC banner, and until I saw Justice League. But also, I'm just going to preface this by saying just a quick statement on Justice League. The reason I hate that film is that it goes right into why I don't like this film either, is because you can very clearly tell that this was a movie made by committee, that it was edited in a slapdash way, too many cooks in the kitchen type of thing, and that's being confirmed by David Ayer as well as the studio, I believe. So those are my 2 things I'm going to say. Now, story wise, so I hate this movie, and the reason I hate it is because there's definitely some redeeming qualities to it. There's some of the characters I like, some of the casting is spot on, but the story itself seems so cut up and disjointed from what it was supposed to be. I think the most glaring aspect of the story is the Joker not being the main villain, and which is fine if you want to go that route. But the villain taking the Joker's place is not necessarily a true villain in the sense of where these movies usually go. And also as well, I don't think it adds anything to why the characters are doing certain things. There's lots of scenes in this movie where I'm confused, where I'm like, I don't really know if I'm supposed to laugh here or be concerned about the characters. There's a lot of flatness. Certain aspects of the story are punctuated by other characters disappearing or other characters getting roped in or other characters getting written off screen. So we should say, spoilers alert for anyone who hasn't seen Suicide Squad. We're probably going to talk about some spoilers. So, but I just felt it was so disjointed. I was really, really excited for this movie when it first came out. Because the first look trailer, which was put out in Comic-Con, I think it was a year and a half before the film came out, is a totally different vibe and totally different feeling than actually what we got. And so for those of you who aren't familiar with, not you guys, but anyone listening, is that basically there was a David Ayer cut, director's cut of the film, and the studio said it's not bright enough, it's too dark, and therefore they got the company that edited the trailers together. So those really hot, flashy trailers that were edited to like Queen and those other songs, that company actually re-edited the film, and then they had David Ayer's edit and another edit, and then those edits sort of got melded together, and that's the film that was released. So in my opinion, I don't think that should ever be done. It never works out. There's clearly classic examples of that, and the one major thing that's influencing this story is that you can tell the story is dark and gritty, but it's never allowed to really get there. And that was mostly because when Batman versus Superman came out, it was edited down as well, and it didn't do the box office numbers that they suspected it would do. Therefore, it was a failure at, whatever it made, like $870 million. It was still considered a failure, and that's what directly influenced this cut of Suicide Squad. So my thought on the story is that it's so disjointed, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, and it's a huge misfire for the DCU, especially at that point in time when they needed a big hit to come out after Batman versus Superman.
All right.
Valid points.
Absolutely.
Now, do you think?
yeah,
I'm going to ask a couple questions here. Do you think the disjointedness could have been because of the editing?
100%. Oh, 100%. Like so originally I think in the original cut of the film opens with the archaeologist finding Enchantress, becoming Enchantress. Like that's the opening of the film, which makes kind of the most sense, right? But in this cut, it's like a flashback to how she became Enchantress, and I don't know. It just doesn't work, and you can tell. Like I've seen enough movies where this always happens. You watch a movie and they say the director hates it, or there's some sort of controversy with it. Like Fantastic Four was another example of that. Like the remake of the Fantastic Four, right? Where Josh Trank was like, it sounds like he got booted out of the editing room, and then what we got was this hodgepodge edit. And I think it does a huge disservice to the story, and that as well as sort of not. I mean, it sounds like Joker was never the main villain, which is mind-boggling to me. And obviously, Jared Leto's come out and said, hey, he shot like enough footage to film like 2 entire movies of Joker stuff, and they used 15 minutes or something. So yeah, I 100%. In a word, yes, Rob, I think it's the editing that kills the movie for sure.
Okay. And you're 100% right about the Joker. It seemed weird to have him in there and not him as the main villain, because that's his stat. It's like having Batman in a movie and have him just ride on a car. Well, actually, wait, they did it in this one. So yeah, it's true too, but it's the same thing. It's weird to have those people in there, and it throws you off.
Yeah,
like 100%. I do have to agree with that point.
Now,
Jason,
do you think the David Ayer cut, if we ever see the light of day, do you think it would be closer to an R rating?
I'm not sure actually. I mean, I know Batman versus Superman was rated R, the director's cut of that film. But it's hard to say. I mean, I think like this DC universe was based on but obviously influenced by Chris Nolan, right? So I love the Dark Knight trilogy. That's the high bar. We said this last time. Dark Knight is the high bar for superhero movies. I think some some movies have come close, but I don't think any movie has either matched it or surpassed it as far as, let's say, hero movies in the last 20 years. So I don't know if it would be R. It definitely seems like that's the way it was going to be, based on the content, the characters, what was coming up out of it. But again, it was like it's DC getting cold feet, being told it's too dark. Marvel's super flashy, fun, and DC's trying to emulate Marvel, probably from the get-go, probably since they made Man of Steel, in my opinion. But it's not. It doesn't need to be that. The darkness of the movie is not the issue with these movies. It's because they're edited poorly, and there's too many people with their hands in the pie trying to make it something that ultimately just turns out to be garbage, right? So,
yeah, if you had to throw a comparison out to Marvel for DC, I'd say Shazam was more of a Marvel wannabe, because they threw far more humor in it than any DC film ever.
And I like Shazam. Like I liked Shazam. I liked Wonder Woman. I liked Batman versus Superman. The director's cut is good. But Shazam was like that. That makes sense though. That's a character that kind of falls into sort of that thing that category, right? Where it's like, yeah, humor and fun stuff it works for this. But I think for Suicide Squad, I mean, even just for the title, it's like, I don't know. It's bizarre that they went this route, and I'll get into some more stuff in regards to the sequel, because some of my points tie into that as well, because I think I kind of have an idea as to what they might do. But yeah, it's I hate this movie. It's like other than Justice League, it's the worst superhero movie I think I might have ever seen. It's definitely up there. There's some other contenders, but I feel like the David Ayer cut, I think we're going to see it. I think it's going to come out after, like, it's done. Like that's the thing that he said was, there's all this talk about Zack Snyder's Justice League coming out, which ultimately will be better than what was released theatrically, just because of what was released theatrically was awful. But David Ayer's cut said there's no editing done. There's a cut that exists, and he can just release it if they give him the green light. I can't imagine HBO Max not doing that if Zack Snyder's Justice League is a success on that platform. So hopefully
that's the general consensus. If the Snyder cut does well, then we'll start getting alternate cuts of some of the other ones too. So yeah, that definitely seems to be the consensus there.
Okay, before we get to James, we have Greg. Hey, James, and everyone.
Hey, Greg.
This is interesting. I completely agree with Benner's opinion on this movie.
Yes, Greg.
James, please don't tell me you gave this a 5 out of 5.
We're about to find out.
And then our buddy James here says, guys, and finally, Marvel and DC. This is just Suicide Squad tonight. This is just Suicide Squad. And we are about to now hear the other wrong opinion. James.
The pro.
Okay. Not to stoke the fight. Not to stoke the fire.
The Tiger should be playing.
Not to stoke the fire. By the way, you are not allowed to mute my mic.
What? Who did that?
You thrust this upon me. You are not allowed to mute my mic. Not to stoke the fire any, but I will say that I always rotate between these three in which DC EU movies I like the most, and that's Suicide Squad, Justice League, and Wonder Woman. And just to see the expression on Jason's face, yes, I still believe Justice League is better than the first Avengers movie. I do remember when we had the screening for Suicide Squad the first time, because I saw it 3 times in the theater, I think. I made this joke to I told my boss at the time that I thought it was a better movie than the first Guardians of the Galaxy. I still believe that. And he jokingly had told me that he wished he was this close to writing me up for that.
He should have.
And just as a side note, I think the Fantastic Four remake is great.
See, it's all making sense.
to build on, do you prefer being called Benner?
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. To build on what Benner said about different cuts, I don't think there's anybody who would deny that a more Joker-centric Suicide Squad would be better. It would. I also think Jared Leto is my second favorite Joker. I think no one's going to touch Heath Ledger. No dispute. I do think he's a lot better of Joker than Jack Nicholson, and Cesar Romero I wouldn't even include, because that's just, that whole Batman universe is just like a joke, right, to me. No disrespect to Adam West or anything. Where was I going with this? Okay, sorry. Different cuts. Like, I'm sure there's an air cut of Suicide Squad, but it would be similar to all other cuts that we've never seen. The original cut of Joe Lynch's Knights of Badassdom, the original cut of Don Coscarelli's Beastmaster. I'm sure those cuts are probably great and more true to the director's vision. I haven't seen them. What I did see, I enjoyed. I really enjoyed, like, from the first trailer all the way through to the movie and the extended version for Suicide Squad. I loved it. I loved what I got. I watched the movie, therefore I understood what was going on. I never understand why people use a cop-out phrase of, like, I have no idea what was going on in this movie. It made no sense. It made perfect sense. If not, turn to the 8-year-old beside you that was watching the movie to explain it to you. No disrespect. But for what I saw, I understood and I enjoyed. Yeah, and again, more Joker would be better. We're not on to characters yet, right? This is just story?
Yes, story.
Okay. Now, I think it's a bit of that. What they did was a bit of a misdirect, and this is nothing new. This is done countless times in movies where you're watching the trailer and what's put forth is, oh, I know the story is going to be about this, and the Joker's going to be the villain, and it's going to be great. And you find out, no, Joker's not the villain. It's the Enchantress. But they can't exactly tell you that right out in the trailer because they want to keep something back. Now, whether this was the studio's decision or David Ayer's, probably the studio's, it's not up to us. So
just to bring up on that point, don't you find that if you were watching a trailer and you're like, okay, cool, Joker's the bad guy and this is it, and then you go to see the movie and it's nothing like that, isn't that misleading?
Not if I enjoy it. Well, of course it's misleading. That's what I said. They did some misdirection. I still enjoyed the Enchantress. I liked her as the villain because she's trying to destroy the world and they're trying to stop it. And I liked what I got of the Joker. I wish I had more. Sure. What I wish I had less of was, no, I'll leave this for the characters things. It's a mislead, but as long as I'm still entertained, it's not going to piss me off.
Okay, fair enough.
Like we see misleads all the time, but they don't always work. And in the case of Suicide Squad, I know a lot of people that were upset by that mislead. I personally, I enjoy the movie. I don't think it's great by any means, but I had a lot of fun watching it. I revisit it once in a while. Not my favorite, but it's a decent flick for me. But I know a lot of people that were like Benner. They were pissed off with what they got. Were not happy with it, and it's understandable. That's a case of the mislead not working entirely.
And I will say this:
that's a big problem.
I will say this: like the misdirect on this as well is a misdirect away from, like, not just a great villain, and we'll get to the characters in a bit because I am not too harsh on the characters because I do feel that they somewhat work in this film, especially due to the casting. But the misdirect is away from not just a great villain, but potentially probably the best villain in all of comic books, which is crazy to me. So I don't doubt for a second that Enchantress was the actual main villain in this movie and Joker was sort of a side villain. But the way they cut it as well, like, I mean, there was all this talk about the Joker was intricate to the ending of the film, and that never happens. He shows back up when you think he's dead. That doesn't happen. For some reason, all of that stuff was cut. And I think I just know that there's a half decent movie in there trying to get out, and that's my personal I hate films that are re-edited by the studio and that have too many like there, and they're not the only. This is not the only example of that. There's tons of examples, and all those movies that are recut by the studio, or they have too many cooks in the kitchen, too many hands in the pie. They always turn out to be, in my opinion, garbage. And I always feel that they could be way better. And for that reason alone, they shouldn't be given any sort of credit as far as like a great movie, because they're just not. They probably maybe had a great movie, but they just wouldn't let it get out, right? So
I will say you do have a point there in that the reveal with Enchantress being the main villain. As much as I love the movie, it could have been structured better in that you find out a little bit late in the movie exactly what happened. It's not until the one chopper crashes and Waller gets kidnapped by the squid whatever guys, and Deadshot finds the book saying like, you need to be straight with us or I'm out. And Flag finally lays out exactly what happened. Yeah, you have a point. It could have been structured better, and you could have been let in on the secret a little bit earlier. That Joker wasn't going to be the villain, and Enchantress was let off the leash way back right before, because they approached the Suicide Squad members early, and they all get turned down. And then Enchantress pulls her little trick, and then they're like, okay, you guys are getting the bombs in your necks and you're going out here whether you like it or not. But you don't find out exactly that until later on in the movie.
See, the misdirect in the trailer was the one thing that kind of ticked me off a little. Because like Benner said, you got the Joker. That's iconic, you know? And it was almost like I went to see, what was it? Life, I think it was called. And in the trailer and in the posters, Ryan Reynolds is very prominent. And he's in the film for like 8 seconds.
What movie is this?
Life. Jake Gyllenhaal.
I
like that.
That's an awesome movie.
Oh, it is. It's the unofficial Venom prequel, right? But it was the fact that Ryan Reynolds was used all through marketing. And
well, it's kind of
in 8 seconds.
It's kind of like the Scream movies where you get a prominent actor killed off in the first 20 minutes or so, I think.
I was just going to say, Drew Barrymore, Scream 1.
Yep.
Jada Pinkett, Scream 2.
She's only in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Like,
yeah.
And she was on the poster, right?
James says
yes, she was.
They do mislead in trailers, and that's how the marketing works for some movies.
Yeah.
It is true.
For some movies.
Suicide Squad was okay. It's not better than
Guardians.
But I did like Jared Leto. Thanks, James. No, it's good to get those opinions.
Yeah.
So, Jason, after round one, who do you think?
Oh no, I'm not. No, we're not picking a winner. We can't do that. We have to leave that to the fans. I can't pick a side here.
You're right.
No,
we
gotta
shouldn't
stay
pick a side.
impartial.
Oh yeah.
No side picking. Okay, so on to round two, Jason.
Round two is the characters. So you both seem to have some opinions for characters. So let's hear what you got. We'll start with Benner.
All right. So the characters are like the one thing I liked about this movie actually the most, and I think probably why I hated the movie was because I did feel that they misused all these characters, with some exceptions. So Amanda Waller is played by Viola Davis is I thought was solid. She was great. Harley Quinn, played by Margot Robbie, there's roles that actors are just they belong to them. I think that Harley Quinn belongs to Margot Robbie. I can't really see anybody else playing that character. She's played her I think twice now, and probably an upcoming third time as well in the sequel. She's fantastic. Will Smith is Will Smith, but you know what you're getting with Will Smith. He
actually surprised me in this. I was worried about him in that role. I expected it to be Will Smith playing that role, but he actually he lost some of his normal Will Smithness, if you will.
Yeah.
When getting into that character, so that was a nice surprise.
He was good. Some good acting between these guys. I like Jay Courtney a lot too, or Jai Courtney. I can't remember if it's Jay Courtney or Jai Courtney, but I liked him as Captain Boomerang. Rick Flag is I can't remember that actor's name, but
Joel Kinnaman.
That's right. Thank you. I just find him very flat in everything I see him in. He just seems very kind of like I just feel like his charisma isn't necessarily there, but he plays a military guy, and whatever, it works. And I also wasn't. I mean, I liked El Diablo. Going down the list, I liked all these characters. I was interested to see how they were going to meld together. I wasn't a huge fan of Enchantress, but the actress is passable. I mean, she's been in a couple of other things as well, and just make it work if you've got a good story, obviously. But Jared Leto, I didn't necessarily have a huge problem with him. I don't know if everything he does with this portrayal of the Joker works, but full marks for doing something creative and new. Obviously, it's a hard act to follow. Following Heath Ledger, and then before that, Jack Nicholson, right? So obviously that was going to be critiqued heavily either way. The gangster sort of crime boss type of vibe that he has in this movie. I mean, I think that's related to David Ayer. David Ayer always writes his films and directs his films based on, what if these characters were from the street? What if they were heavily involved in gang culture and that sort of stuff? Like, a lot of his movies are very, very much like that. End of Watch. Obviously he wrote Training Day, I believe, too. So, I mean, he's got that. That's his thing, right? So I know, and again, there was lots of scenes in the first look trailer where you had El Diablo kind of come out of this kind of house where it sort of looks like the wrong side of town, and he blows up something, and it was really like, that's the kind of neat stuff I was kind of anticipating. The characters are fine. I just feel that, because it's edited in such a weird way with this disjointed story that is kind of cobbled together, I feel that their motivations and sometimes their interactions aren't necessarily clear with one another. So what happens is that these characters act one way in one scene, and then a few minutes later they act a completely different way. And that, to me, I found was the most jarring and just kind of a missed opportunity. Killer Croc as well. I liked him. And I found that them together, I did feel that there was probably a few characters that I mean, Slipknot doesn't stick around for, more than 30 seconds. Right. So, but there was no need to do that. Right. I felt like, I felt either include him or don't include him. And I can't remember there was another character. Who was the other character? The samurai. I can't remember her name.
Katana,
right. Which I thought was an interesting character too, but just too many backstories, too many things competing, trying to kind of get to this certain point. So the other thing as well is that they spend so much time on kind of roping in Batman into this thing, which could have been spent on delivering probably a little bit more of a backstory on these characters. I think who they do well with is Harley Quinn and Deadshot. I think that you kind of know who these characters are. They're the main characters, I think, of the team, and ultimately go on to become the main characters of the story later on. But again, I just feel like there's a lot of wasted opportunity with making these characters kind of even more iconic than they could have been, or than they actually turned out to be. And it's just, yeah, I mean, but ultimately, that's my biggest complaint, is that you have these characters that are super interesting and fun, and their motivations are sort of all over the place as far as what they're doing. I remember when I went to see the film, there's that scene, I think after the helicopter crash, where Harley Quinn falls out of the helicopter, Joker's on the helicopter crashes, blows up, and then she's on a roof of a police car in the rain. And I remember my buddy leaning over to me being like, am I supposed to laugh or cry right now? I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. I don't know what emotion they're going for here. And I think everything just happens so quickly that it just kind of dislodges these characters, and they're sort of all over the place. And then it just becomes kind of like a paint by numbers movie by the end. So that's my take on the characters. I think full marks for acting, some great casting here. I would say as well, sorry, just to tie back into the story, I wasn't sure which point to actually, you know what? I'll save this for the next portion, because I think it's probably more applicable.
Okay.
Next one's connection to the DCU, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
They tried to do an Avengers style movie without the lead up. The only reason Avengers could focus on stories, because all the intros had been done, all the origins had been given. They tried to pack, I think there was 8 people in this story, and they tried to get all their origins in, make you feel about each and every one of them, and have a story on top of it. So I agree with you on that part. That was kind of, there was too much to put into that movie.
I mean, James mentioned earlier, like Guardians of the Galaxy is that's a good comparison, right? And I think there's no surprise as to why James Gunn's actually directing Suicide Squad 2, right? But that's a movie that you don't really know anything about these characters. I remember when that movie was kind of announced, I was like, I don't know if that's going to fly, Marvel. Like, I think that's so far off. Like, this isn't Iron Man or the Hulk or anything. It's like, I mean, people know who Thor is, right? I don't know if it's going to connect, and it's probably one of the best movies they made. As far as just like, here's a bunch of ragtag, renegades off the, living around the on the outskirts of town kind of deal, growing up on the wrong side of the tracks, and now they're all flying around in this ship together. Like, I think you got a talking raccoon and all that stuff. I don't want to go into a big like Guardians of the Galaxy tangent here, but I think that's a great comparison where you do have all these backstories, but it's very, very clear what these characters are and their relationship to each other and what their motivations are together. Whereas I think in this movie, it's like the motivations are kind of all over the place, including Rick Flagg's, including Amanda Waller's. Like, what's the purpose of this movie? Like, what are they trying to do? And ultimately, the answer is nothing. Like, nothing gets accomplished, and it just seems like such a waste of time.
And the other thing about characters I'll say too is Amanda Waller, like Viola Davis, nailed that character, but yet she looks nothing like the comic book. And she is the kind of character you love to get that's different, like Sam Jackson as Nick Fury.
I just need a refill.
Okay. Sam Jackson is Nick Fury, completely wrong compared to the comic. But yet he is that
yes
role.
and no, because he does kind of line up with the Ultimates, or is the Ultimates line?
Yeah.
So one of the alternate universes or whatever that they did.
Yeah, is it Dark Universe or is that DC? I can't remember.
The Ultimates.
Ultimates.
Oh,
Okay.
it is Ultimates. Okay.
There is a Justice League Dark universe that they're trying to work on, or Justice League Dark. Sorry.
Yes.
But
they did an animated with it. That's all like the supernatural stuff with Constantine and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Ultimates is the line of comics that was created when the MCU started. So it was modeled after Sam Jackson because Sam Jackson was Nick Fury.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I
heard about that.
Okay.
Yeah, they tried to incorporate the MCU into the comics because people loved those characters so much. So
it was sort of like how they got Ryan Reynolds for Deadpool, because the creator actually referenced what Deadpool described himself as a cross between, what was it, like a what's the wrinkly dogs? The ones that look like their skin is sagging or something.
I know what you mean. I just can't think of their name.
He said like he described his looks as a cross between that breed of dog and Ryan Reynolds. And that's what got Ryan Reynolds interested.
Oh no, Ryan Reynolds was campaigning to make a Deadpool movie since Blade Trinity. It took him 11 years to make that movie, so
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know about that one. He was actually trying to get that made since Blade Trinity.
Okay, so James. Oh,
okay.
Hang on a second.
Sorry?
Because James, English Bulldog.
No, English Bulldog, yeah.
English Bulldog, or whatever the hell the wrinkle. Can somebody remember what the name those wrinkle dogs are called?
I know the ones you're talking about because they're fluffy. And
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna look while you talk about characters.
Okay. I'm gonna start with Flag for something that Benner said. I want to start with Flag because I don't want to forget this. I thought some of his charisma actually and humor came through in the character, and there was 3 scenes for this. One of them was when like he throws some comment at Deadshot, and Will Smith comes over and says, "Did you just threaten me?" He's like, "Oh yeah." And when Deadshot is listing his demands, like, oh, she's gonna go like, but she gets visitation, but her boyfriend does not. Darnell is out. Darnell's out. Yeah, Darnell's out. And just the back and forth they did, and then, but the initial pep talk he gives him, he's like, "You're going somewhere dangerous to do something that's going to get you killed. Until then, you're my problem." I thought he was very, very good in this movie. I'm a big fan of Joel Kinnaman anyway. Ever since I first noticed him in, what was it, Safe House. him, Denzel, and Ryan Reynolds, and he shows up at the last safe house they get to. I thought he was excellent as Rick Flag. Would I have liked to have seen Tom Hardy in the Rick Flag role as was originally intended? Absolutely yes. But I thought Joel Kinnaman did a good job. I thought it was this guy is unflappable. I loved how they every time they came up, they gave their stat sheet, and he's like proficient with these weapons, and it was like every weapon under the sun. Kind of did that for Deadshot too, but anyway. Deadshot, up until this movie came out, until they actually released the movie, I still didn't believe. It's like Will Smith is seriously not doing this movie. Is he actually going to be in this movie? And then he finally comes out, and it's like, Will Smith is Deadshot. He's in this ensemble movie. And I thought he himself was the heart of this movie. I loved the layers they peeled back on his character, like his daughter, how he really doesn't love anyone. He loves to kill people. And the way they bring back that at the end when he's about to shoot the bomb that's going up into the whatever world destroying machine she has. The way he's beating on the punching bag and then just stops to kind of hug it. And so I thought he was fantastic in this movie. I'll agree with Viola Davis. I don't know what Amanda Waller looked like in the comics. I haven't really been into comics per se. Much larger, like Kingpin, or just
yeah, kind of
Velma, or someone from 227, or anyway.
Traditionally, that's what she's usually a very heavy supplement.
I would echo Will Smith's Deadshot's quote in this, that is just a mean lady. It's like, finishes all their work and just blows them all away. That's gangsta. To get this out of the way, the one character, the one weak point I found in, what are you doing?
That's Amanda Waller.
Oh, I see. So it's more like Nell Carter.
Yeah.
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 Now I'm imagining Nell Carter as Amanda Waller, and I could still see it working. The one weak point I found in this movie, and no one's going to agree with me, and looking at this movie as far as this movie had been released, nothing else had been released after it. I think Margot Robbie was miscast as Harley Quinn. I was annoyed by her. She's the only character in the movie I don't like.
Oh man, really?
She's hot and she's a good actress. I thought she was annoying. And whether or not she's portraying Harley Quinn accurately, maybe I just find the character of Harley Quinn annoying. Like I found her annoying on the I found her annoying on the animated series. I found her annoying in this movie. Now, that being said, had they transplanted her portrayal of Harley Quinn in Birds of Prey into this movie, that would have been a vast improvement. I was skeptical about Birds of Prey. I watched it. I'm like, I like her a hell of a lot more in this movie than I did in Suicide Squad. I don't know what it was. I mean,
we'll have to have another debate about Birds of Prey, but yeah.
She is a
sympathetic.
I do like Harley Quinn in both those movies, and Margot Robbie as that character. But yeah, I've got major problems with both movies as far as being for their entertainment value.
I enjoyed Birds of Prey, but I'm not going to fight you on that one. I don't have as strong of feelings as that movie as I do for Suicide Squad.
Okay.
Who's another one? Jai Courtney as Boomerang. I thought they used him just the right amount. From the moment they unzip his body bag, he gets out and immediately knocks out one of the guards around him. They had him against the wall, and he's just like, I was just playing mahjong with my mom. And I was like, no, you were robbing a bank. I was not. I thought especially from his iconic line from the trailer, it's just like, you know what they say about the crazy ones. I thought he was great in this movie. And I think he'll probably he can only go up from here for the sequel, but I'll wait till we're talking about the sequel. Croc was good. I like the actor. I can never pronounce his regular name, so I just call him Adebisi or Mr. Echo because those are the other 2 roles he's most known for. I thought he was great, and this was another thing that annoyed me in the bar scene, which was the thing I liked the most about Diablo, was this where he tells about his backstory and how he kills his own family accidentally. But she's going around saying like blah 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 all these people, and says like, and then she turns to Croc saying, you're ugly on the outside. He's like, no man, I'm beautiful. She's like, yeah, you are. Like, you just said he was ugly, and just buckle like a belt, why don't you?
That scene, that's what I'm talking about. Like, that barroom scene was totally edited differently in the trailer. Like, there's different dialogue in the trailer from that exact same scene. I bet you that scene plays out totally differently in David Ayer's cut than it did on the cut that we got, and that's the disservice, I think, to the actors.
Okay,
for example, right?
Okay,
there.
I'll give you that. That could have suffered greatly from using different takes that don't exactly match up. Yeah, I'll give you that. I like Cara Delevingne as an actress from the few movies she's been in. Valerian is a good movie. I'm a huge fan of the movie Paper Towns, and I really liked her intro scene in this one, where it's the thing she does where she says Enchantress and puts her hands down on the table, and then the fingers come up and turns it over, and all of a sudden she's transformed into Enchantress.
Yeah, that was great.
That was great, especially when she's over by the guy in charge. He's like, please don't touch me. Please don't touch me. And she didn't do a whole lot. She didn't have a whole lot to do except kind of belly dance and whatever. And I still liked her better than Harley Quinn in this movie. Kitana, I liked her. I would like more backstory on the whole. I wouldn't advise getting killed by her. Her sword tends to trap the souls of the victims. Well, where'd she get that sword? Who did that sword belong to? And who was her husband? More stuff I would like to know that we probably won't, because I don't think Kitana's in the Suicide Squad.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I've already talked about the Joker, Diablo, Slipknot. Okay. I will admit. What? I will admit. I was saying, like, to show some Canadian pride. I'm glad Adam Beach was in this movie. I don't think, because we only got this much of his. There's the timer blocking this much of this character. I don't know if he had survived, how he would have gelled with the rest of them. I think that they had to demonstrate the seriousness of the bomb in the neck. So throw in a disposal character that you can kill off in 5 minutes to show everyone else how serious Waller and Flag are. Fine. It happens to be Slipknot. It could have been Boomerang for all we know, and they give all the humor and stuff to Slipknot. I don't know. I don't know if Slipknot's going to survive in Ayer's cut. I doubt it, but I don't even know anything about Slipknot. As I said, I'm not really much into the comics themselves, but I'm sure he lasted
I'm not 100%,
longer.
but I think he was a created character just to throw him away in that film. I don't think he's a recurring character in the DC comics at all.
Well,
I've never heard of him at all.
I do know that he existed in the comics. I didn't read much up on him, but I wonder if it's just like some of the Avengers where at some point or time, like the Avengers were made up of like Wolverine and this guy, or the Fantastic Four was this guy, and like Slipknot could have been just one iteration of the Suicide Squad that they swapped out over the decades that they've existed, I think. And
oh yeah, he existed.
As for main characters, yeah. As for supporting characters, I really liked Joker's main henchman. I don't know if it was Johnny something. Jim Pollock, I think, is the actor's name. I thought he was pretty great, but he's only in there a little bit. And the guard that's always talking to Deadshot. I want you to kill him and then go home and erase my browser history.
Like, I did like like there's definitely a lot of stuff I liked about the characters too. Like I liked Harley Quinn, and I liked her wardrobe. I liked all of her getup. I liked her baseball bat. I liked all the stuff about that character. I think was spot on. I think for people that were waiting to see that character on screen in a movie, I don't think you could have done it any other way.
And then she spoke, and then it was just like
so and I think the way that she speaks, I think, is very in line with Batman the Animated Series when it was the first iteration, I think, of that character. I don't think she actually even appeared in the comics before the cartoon.
She was created for the show.
Yeah, so
really?
I mean, I think they were pretty genuine with their representation, and also liked, I liked stuff about Killer Croc when he comes out in the first time. He's got the Hannibal Lecter mask on, and I liked all the stuff of Deadshot. I mean, that's my problem with the film is again, like I said, and even Joel Kinnaman, I know I got introduced to him through when I was through House of Cards. He plays sort of like a senator that's running for president against Kevin Spacey in a couple of the seasons, and he was serviceable. Like, he's a serviceable actor. I don't mean to. I'm not dissing the guy or anything. And he's good enough in this movie for the role he needs to play. I just felt that some of the character was a bit flat, and I don't know if that's. And again, I can't tell if that's between the editing cuts or if that's just kind of how it happened, right?
I will say I liked her as Dr. Harleen Quinzel before she turned into Harley Quinn. I thought her character before she turns bad was pretty cool, especially, and there's a scene that's in the extended version. I don't know if you've seen it, Benner. Your hatred of this movie notwithstanding.
I think I've seen most of the scenes, yeah.
Because there's the extended version where she chases down, Joker's driving along and she chases him on, she's on a motorcycle, she pulls up beside him and Joker's just like, She wipes out the motorcycle and stops, and she's just like, she's aiming a gun at him, shoots the trucker that gets out of his truck, and she's pointing a gun at the Joker, and the Joker's like, do it. She's like, you're afraid of my heart, but you're not afraid of me killing you. And he's just like, yeah, you I'd say you were crazy if you weren't so out of your mind or whatever. He's like, go away. And I just thought her up until before she turns into Harley Quinn, had she stayed with that kind of, maybe it's the tone of voice, I don't know. I just don't like that Harley Quinn voice. It's like, Mr. J, and like, what's that perfume? The stench of death, and like, oh,
yeah,
gets on my nerves.
That's right from the cartoon. So
that is 100%.
You have to honor, I think, the character as much as you can, from the source material, right? So, but again, yeah, I mean, I can understand that. I mean, some of those criticisms, I think, were my own of Birds of Prey, not so much of Harley Quinn, but other characters that I felt were, just seemed weird and disjointed as far as the rest of the film goes. But I mean, for the characters themselves, like stylistically, I feel like I was on board with Joker. I like the idea. There was a rumor floating around that he was actually not the Joker, but he was actually Robin, who was going to be right. Yeah. So that was online.
That's a fan theory that I still hold in my heart.
And I still feel that makes a lot of sense. And to the point that that's for what they were trying to do in that universe. Who knows? Maybe that was something that they were going to explore down the road, or maybe they weren't. Because I know in Batman versus Superman, there's that clip where there's the Robin suits in the Batcave, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was something just came out recently where I think it was David Ayer actually said it, that was not the Jason Todd Robin, that was Dick Grayson.
Yeah,
Dick Grayson is dead in the DCEU.
There's a thing he said.
That blows that thing out.
Yeah. There's a thing he said that I still, it's a little bit confusing with me. Okay. I don't know how well you remember this scene, but the scene where Dr. Quinzel is in the room with Joker, and he's saying like, "Oh, this time with you is great," and where he's asking for an AK, and he smiles at her. Does it look to you like he has the metal, the grilled teeth?
Oh, I can't remember.
You don't remember? Okay.
I'm assuming
if he does or he doesn't, you assume he did. But there's a thing right when Harley is introduced, her little card that pops up saying very quickly, complicit in the murder of Robin. And David Ayer has come out and said that aside from what he said about like there's a story behind all the tattoos on the Joker's body. He said like basically the Joker and Harley killed Robin, and Batman took it out on the Joker and basically busted all his teeth. And that's why he has the metal. That's why he has all the like reconstructed grilled teeth, or metal teeth, or whatever.
Yeah, I like that. Like that's
Well,
the stuff
well-
I wanted in this movie, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
stuff, the little things that it's like, hey, so this makes sense. And like, because I didn't necessarily hate Jared Leto's performance as the Joker either. I was like, there's something there. It's just not enough, and I just don't know. Like, I just cannot comprehend who was calling the shots on the edit of that movie. And I think that's where a lot of my and look, I know it takes a lot to make a movie, and I just get so agitated when I know that there's something really good there and it's just not allowed to breathe, and it gets smothered and suffocated, and to me it's dead after that, right? So
yeah, especially when you see some of the trailer shots. You see the awesome trailer shot of the Joker where he's got half his face burned and he's got like a grenade, he's like bye bye, and the other one where he's just like and it's just like shots that you don't get to see in the movie.
that, and also as well, like I know the assault on Arkham, right, which leads to Dr. Quintel becoming Harley Quinn, is like that whole sequence is awesome. There's guys with like helmets that look like giant eyeballs, dressed in panda suits, Batman masks. Like there's all these. It's like that's the stuff that I was like that I was hoping to see. I was like, this is going to be kind of a nutso kind of crazy movie. Like, why is that guy wearing that mask? It doesn't matter. Who cares? Stylistically, the movie is really, really cool. That's why I it's just like I just don't understand why they would go that route. And it wasn't necessarily, and as well, like I've had conversations with people saying, okay, well, look, it still made like, whatever it made, $760 million at the box office. Like how could you be mad at that? Like, I mean, that's ridiculous. And it's like, right, but it should have made $1 billion. Right. And it's like, it's you're looking at those box office numbers. You're not looking at, how much it made. Good. You're looking at the opportunity, like the loss of revenue that you probably would have made. And same thing was Batman versus Superman, because they did the same thing. They made the same errors. And I'm not saying that Batman versus Superman is flawless. It is not. But there's definitely certain things in it. Like I remember watching. So sorry, I'm just going to go on a quick little tangent here.
Yeah.
I remember watching Batman Superman in the theater, and I remember they get. So sorry, spoilers alert as well. But I remember they kidnap Martha Kent, and they have her in this room, and I can't remember. It's Lex Luthor says take care of her, and in walks this guy with a blowtorch, right? And I remember in the theater being like this is escalating very quickly. Whereas like if you watch the director's cut, that guy with the blowtorch is like kicking around. He does all the like it makes sense in that scenario because he comes back. In the original theatrical cut, it's just some guy with a blowtorch that just walks into the room. It's like Jesus.
Yeah.
Like
theatrical cut is a mess.
Yeah, and that's like the same issues with that cut rolled into Suicide Squad. For some reason, I think they were getting to the point where they didn't want to address those concerns and say, oh yes, there's another cut. I mean, for the longest time, they denied that there was a Snyder cut, right? Like, and that's the problem, and that's where all this. I know there's a lot of vitriol online and stuff like that. I'm not defending if people are being complete, assholes about it, right? There's one thing to be critical. There's another thing to be a complete dick about things, right? But I think the Snyder cut, where my thing lies, and again, this is tying right back to my problems with Suicide Squad, is that you have a film that is there that's being disrupted. The course of that film going from a director's vision to a final product for people to see is being disrupted. And that's my problem, is that you would never want to see like the alternate cut of, let's say, Dark Knight. You would never want to see the alternate cut of some other movie, because those movies are already great, right? But if a crappy movie comes out and there's an existing cut that the director did, I want to see it, just compare. I want to see what the original vision of that film was and how it differs from what the final product was. I hate it when people say, oh, well, we need to do this because it's going to appeal to more people. And it's the same thing. Like a great example of this is Die Hard 4. Die Hard 4 is okay as a PG-13 movie. Like, it's passable. I had fun at the theater watching it. But the R-rated version is so much better because it's Die Hard, it's John McClane, and it's like, it's not called Die Hard PG-13. And that's my problem with this stuff, is that you've got to give the content and the source material the ability to breathe. And if you're going to limit a director's ability to tell that story, then why even hire him in the first place?
I will say, in my opinion, in a case where this failed, and again, this isn't a Marvel or DC movie, but in a case where Paul Schrader did his version of The Exorcist, there was like a prequel to the Exorcist movies, and then he presents his movie, and the studio says, fires him, brings in Rennie Harlin, director of Die Hard 2, and puts out Exorcist at the beginning. Now, I saw Exorcist at the beginning. I thought it was great. A couple years later, it has its own failures, and they go back to Paul Schrader saying, "Okay, do you want to make your version of the movie?" So he makes his version of the movie, Dominion, prequel to The Exorcist. That comes out. That I really didn't care for that version at all. I liked Rennie Harlin's version. I got to see both versions, and the original vision didn't work for me.
See, I sometimes wonder.
No, I'm just saying that was just my opinion.
Gotcha. Sometimes I wonder if the amount of hate is reflective on the quality of the work. Like Benner said, there's a good movie hiding in there somewhere, so you hate it even more because of what they did to it. If you have a movie coming out that you know that's going to be garbage and you watch it, it's garbage, you're not mad because you expect it. But
yeah, I wouldn't say it's and again, I wouldn't say it's hatred. I use that term as in a comic way, but frustration, right? And I had the same frustration when I watched Fantastic Four as well, where it's like here's for some reason they just cannot get Doctor Doom right. You know, arguably one of the coolest comic book villains of all time, maybe the coolest comic book villain in Marvel. I don't know, up for debate, but like he's definitely cool. He's definitely a good bad guy. And like we've had this conversation on our last podcast where, you know, the definition of your villain or the better you define your villain, the more awful and horrendous he is, the better your hero becomes. Right.
Exactly.
So I felt like in this movie, at least for Suicide Squad, like Amanda Waller, top notch. And the thing is like Viola Davis doesn't seem threatening. And that's why she's such a good actress, because she does. Right? So,
I didn't believe the stories. They never do.
yeah. So I mean, I like that stuff. I think a lot of stuff played well with the characters, and again, it's stylistically, there's got a lot of style into it, and it's enjoyable from that perspective. But I do not like watching movies that I can tell are edited and re-edited and then edited again, and like, you know, it's baffling to me. I think. Now, the best reaction to this, I think Wonder Woman came out after this movie, right?
Yeah.
And they kind of left that film alone. And that movie did big box office numbers. It's considered one of maybe the best DC movie they've released so far in this sort of cinematic universe. And I really do feel it's because they just said, make your movie and we'll put it out. And I think that's kind of what happened with that film, that was allowed to do what it was supposed to do. That I don't think, other than Man of Steel, I don't think any of those movies really had the ability to do that based on the studio.
I honestly think, and this will actually lead into the next topic, the DCEU suffered from a cascade effect. When Man of Steel came out, they suddenly saw all these issues that they then incorporated into Batman versus Superman. They had issues with Batman, Superman. They tried to incorporate them into Suicide. Like they were doing things on the fly. And it's like, just let your vision go. You know, they weren't getting the results Marvel were, so they desperately tried to change anything they could, and I think it hurt them more.
Yeah, and I'll get into a couple other points too, just with the next topic when it comes up too, because some of that plays into that.
In that case,
let's get into it. Let's hear about Suicide Squad's connection to the rest of the DCEU.
Okay, so So again, just what you were saying, Rob. It's like they're trying to do too much, too little time, trying to jam everything into this one box to make sure it connects, so they can have this Justice League movie. And the story behind Justice League is that, when I say the studio, I mean like the guys running that department, so running the DC feature film division, right? Not the entire studio, of course. But I love Warner movies. I love Dark Knight movies, and I love some of the stuff they've done since then, like Wonder Woman and obviously, you know, other franchises that they have. However, I do know that the stuff with Justice League is like everything was trying to get spun up to this moment where they could drop this film. And they, you know, it was disclosed later on online, allegedly, that they had the execs would get bonuses if they had Justice League out at this certain time, which I believe was before the end of the year, on whatever year it came out, and I think it was 2017 or maybe 2018. So they rushed it, right? And that movie is like, I mean, we don't need to talk about Henry Cavill's like, computer erased mustache. Like, we don't need to, like, that's a terrible movie for the exact same reasons. So tying into DCU, I just feel that they were just like, we got to catch up to Marvel. We got to catch up to Marvel. We got to catch up to Marvel, and rush. By doing so, I feel like they thought that they had a misfire on Batman versus Superman, which I feel is caused just by them just not releasing the 3-hour extended cut to begin with. I think he would have got a different reaction. I think so. What I heard, just reading online, is when Batman versus Superman came out, and I think it set at like 27% on Rotten Tomatoes, and apparently that was a gut shot. Apparently nobody knew what to do. People thought they were going to have this massive hit, and they did not think that they were going to get just skewered critically, which ultimately affected the box office. And then the fans saw it, and the fans were like, well, yeah, I mean, there's cool stuff. I like Zack Snyder's vision of how he films stuff, how he photographs it. It's not for everyone. I know people have problems with that, but I liked 300. I loved Watchmen. I like that aesthetic. Zack Snyder's not the greatest director of all time. I mean, I watched Sucker Punch, which I thought I would love, and hated it as well, because it was this, again, it was like something about the story that doesn't necessarily like add up or line up exactly how he wants to do. But having said that, Zack Snyder's vision was the jumping off point for this whole universe. And the ideas that he was incorporating into the Superman lore, I thought were super, super cool. I thought it was super interesting. And no pun intended, of course. But I just thought it was engaging. The fact that like Superman's a god, and perhaps that what if he turns out to be evil, and what if he turns out to not have humanity's best interests at heart? And what do you do? Like, everything, your whole belief system across the entire planet is disrupted because you have this one being from another planet that's come down and sort of like enacted his will. For the will of the good, but still. And so that's where this movie jumps off. That's where Suicide Squad jumps off, right? They say, well, what about a world without Superman? And the idea of assembling Suicide Squad together is because, well, if one being can kind of like, what does Amanda Waller say? Open up the White House and take out the president and whatever. Yeah, it's a neat idea, but like ultimately, when this movie starts, like, Superman is dead, right? So is that even a threat anymore? I don't know. I mean, I guess they're planning for the next big thing to happen. But again, I just felt like tying it in, the whole Batman thing. And again, so Batman tying into Harley Quinn and the Joker, there's that scene on the car and stuff. Cool. Batman's in it. Neat. And obviously the tie into Deadshot's backstory. But I just felt like at the end of the day, I was like, why aren't you going with Joker? Wouldn't it make sense? Like if Batman's indisposed, because the idea was that Batman was indisposed with fighting Superman, so that's why he wasn't around in Suicide Squad. But that's never really discussed, and it's never really given any time to breathe. So again, Joker missing for whatever reason, like, he's not in any of the other movies. This was their chance to establish a great villain for a continuing role, and not doing anything with it. So it's almost like same issues I have with the new Star Wars trilogy, right? So there doesn't seem to be a plan, like a long-term plan. And the one thing about Marvel, like warts and all with Marvel, ultimately they have a big board on the wall, and they know exactly how things play out, exactly where things are going to sit, and how the stories are going to progress, both in the individual storylines and the major Avengers arc, which is amazing. Like it's a huge accomplishment. So with DCU, I just felt like they were like, oh, we just need to have this guy in here and this guy in here and this guy in here. But if there's no point to that, there's no connective tissue to really carry that story along. And again, you have to wonder how much of that stuff was lost through an edit or through studio manipulation with what we got and what we were supposed to get. I think is telling, right? So I don't know. That's my thing. I think they just tried to jam too much stuff into the box. It didn't all fit, and it's a bit of a mess. And I think that carried right on to Justice League, unfortunately. And lo and behold, Wonder Woman was spared that. So that's, yeah.
I think DC has a big board too, but the problem is they're using a dry erase board, and people keep brushing up against it, and then they can't remember what they brushed off. So
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
all right,
I can't argue. I cannot argue those.
James.
Yes, James.
I would just say that I don't think there's any question as to where this movie lies in the connection to the DCEU. The movie takes place after Batman versus Superman. It's easy. Because the movie opens with her walking up. You see the guy with the Superman turns it around and says, "We remember." So Superman's dead. Batman versus Superman has happened.
That's great. Yeah.
The allusion to the Joker exists in Batman versus Superman with the haha, what a joke or whatever on the Robin's armor. And then there's Batman spliced into the movie twice. And then Bruce Wayne once at the end to show the kickoff point to Justice League. The only question I have is not related to this because it's related to the sequel and like where the hell does the Suicide Squad fit into the timeline? This one fits fine into the timeline, doesn't connect to Shazam or Wonder Woman, but I think it fits in between Justice League and Batman versus Superman just fine.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Maybe I misspoke. I'm not saying that I know where that. I agree with you. That's where that movie exists. But it's just bizarre how they're trying to desperately to connect it to things that aren't necessarily there, and never end up happening. And I think that Batman versus Superman had the same problems, in respect to like, oh well, if we just cut this, it won't matter. And it's like, okay, but why was that in there? Why was this other piece in there? It doesn't make any sense. And I think that Suicide Squad suffers that. And I think Justice League suffered because of that as well. Justice League's a whole other story as far as like how they put that together. But I'm interested to see, how this movie, if there is an air cut, if it comes out, how it actually does look differently and how it does change. But again, I still feel like it's going to be a flawed movie in the same respect as Batman versus Superman, where you have the Joker's not the main villain. They spend all this time establishing him as a main villain, and then don't utilize. And they hired Jared Leto too, right? I mean, he had an Oscar at that time as well, I believe. So he's a great actor. And you don't utilize him for anything. So I don't know if a cut will save the movie. It's just a very bizarre. For me, I feel like this movie should have been Harley Quinn's movie for some reason, in that it's dead shots because they were able to cast Will Smith. Like I always think about that stuff. Like if Deadshot was some other actor, would he be more prominent in the movie, or is he only this prominent because he was originally written that way, and they got Will Smith? I'm just not sure, but it does seem that there's 2 or 3 people jostling for like the main character kind of segment here in this movie, and it gets kind of diluted. And again, we never really see these characters again up until Birds of Prey, where we get Harley Quinn again, right? So again, I think Margot Robbie owns this role. I think she's fantastic in it, but again, I don't know what they were trying to do ultimately. Like I mean, what's crazy is like they never thought, like, we have a Batman movie, right? Like there's a new Batman movie coming out. Like I can't imagine that wasn't discussed at the time to say, look, we've got Ben Affleck, Academy Award winning actor, and we've got him in this movie roped into it. Like there must have been conversations about, we're going to make like the Batman, I think, was Ben Affleck's movie, wasn't it? And then
he was going to write, direct, and star.
Yeah, yes. And then all thrown out the window. And I don't know how close. Is it Matthew Vaughn that's directing the new one? I can't remember. But
Matt Reeves.
Matt Reeves, sorry. Matt Reeves' version. I don't know how different that is from the one that existed before. But my thought is that it was very different based on the trailer that we saw.
They got rid of Affleck's script. And Affleck and Chris Terrio's script.
So it sounds like a completely different movie. But I mean. The other thing to me about this whole thing is that, and again, I still feel it was what was going on inside that part of the studio at the time, was that when you have these announcements about the Zack Snyder cut, and you have you have character, like all of these actors are wanting to get involved again. So Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Jason Momoa has come out and said something like, finally we get to see like what they cut. Like they're actively sorry, is it Ray Fisher who plays Cyborg? Like
Yeah.
he's been tremendously outspoken with the treatment on set and that sort of thing. I think it's very telling that whatever was happening on Justice League probably extended back a few years into past movies. And I know you're damned in Hollywood if you actually point that stuff out as a director. And so, I don't necessarily fault David Ayer for protecting his meal ticket, because I do feel like, what's the point, right? If you're going to butt heads and whatever. I heard that there was 2 cuts, and then this is the 3rd cut. This is the meshed cut between his vision and the vision of the people that actually cut the trailer. But again, I don't know. I just feel like it's so ham-fisted the way they put it out that I don't know what the clear vision was past this movie. Yes, they had Wonder Woman. They needed the Wonder Woman movie to set up Justice League, but they had already introduced Wonder Woman in Batman vs Superman anyway. So it's just bizarre how they structured this film when they released it, and kind of what the vision was for the universe going forward, because I really don't know what they were planning at the end of this film.
I think I've figured out the proper analogy here to compare what DC has done compared to Marvel. Marvel ties things together with slight threads. There's except in the few big cases, most of the connections are quick little one-offs, little threads, little connections.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with DC, their stuff, they were literally playing either like tag or pass the baton. They're trying to almost ham-fist stick these movies together. And that doesn't work on a big budget level like that. That just doesn't work.
Yeah, and not to beat a dead horse here, but like it's again, it comes back to the Joker, and there's that scene kind of I think it's in the first third of the first act of the movie, where it's like it's the scene with the car and the chase, where it's like it's you got Harley Quinn, the Joker, and Batman all in this one kind of action sequence, and then past that, when Joker doesn't become the main villain, I don't know, you're kind of like, well, that's kind of the movie I want to see. Like I want to see those characters. And who doesn't want to see Batman, right? So I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit, probably when in development, when they were thinking of what they could do. And I think probably my guess, I mean, if I had to have a guess, I'd probably say someone's idea was that, hey, you can have Batman in every movie, and that'll get people wanting to come and see it, or you can have Joker in every movie. And that was maybe an idea, but it just doesn't work, and it clearly didn't work. I don't think, with regards to what the people involved with the project have even said about it.
It would be interesting to have a little poll on people. How much of Joker were you expecting? How much Batman were you expecting in that film?
Yeah, I mean, right out of the theater 4 years ago would be great.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jason,
here we are, the final topic. Even though there's not a lot of information to work with, but what is your takes on the upcoming The Suicide Squad sequel?
Should I go first?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. I'm interested. I mean, I think Marvel and Disney did James Gunn pretty dirty, and I think DC. I mean, congratulations on them. Because it was a huge power play for them to scoop him up. And now he's working in both universes, right? Because
one, I think.
It's James Gunn, right? I mean, we won't get into the controversy, but again, it was like, it was a bit overblown. It was a bit, to me, it was just like, well, how did you not know this stuff? Like, it's like, it's not like it was a secret. And I honestly, it was just, it's anyway, let's not get into the controversy, but James Gunn has proven himself to be a very, very talented director. Even going back to films like Slither, and which I love. But again, for them to scoop him up, and basically, I mean, again, I always think to myself, what if I was a fly on the wall in those negotiations? And you have to wonder if he's just like, look, you give me carte blanche, I'll make a movie for you, and I'll do a good job. And I've made Guardians 1, Guardians 2. Both big hits at the box office, big movies that people enjoyed for the most part. And I think they did a good job. So it's like, it's interesting to know, like, it'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out, right?
But will we get more hands in the cookie jar as they have in the past, or did they learn from the mistakes?
Apparently, according to what I've read online, they love everything he's done with it so far.
Yeah, I mean, so what's interesting to me is that Harley Quinn's in it as Margot Robbie, and Jai Courtney's in it as Boomerang, and Will Smith was supposed to be in it, but I don't know if there was a scheduling conflict, but I think Idris Elba's in it, and he was supposed to play Deadshot originally, but then they changed his character to another character out of respect for Will Smith. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, Joel Kinnaman's in there as Flag.
Right. Yeah.
Viola Davis is in there as Waller. And they got 4 or 5 people in there, and some people still insist on calling this a reboot. And it's like, you've cast 5 of the same people in the same role. It's a sequel.
It's very interesting. I don't quite know how that's going to fit in. Like, I mean, it's very unclear. And the fact that it's called The Suicide Squad and not just Suicide Squad 2 or Part 2 or whatever you want to call. Like, I'm surprised it's not kind of funny to say, hey, you know what, look, like, we got, but like, here's James Gunn's version. The cast is crazy. And I'm not like, I'm gonna go see it, man. Like, I'm not if it's safe to do so, obviously, like, come on, like, I'm gonna go see it. Like, I'm not saying, oh, boycott all DC movies and all that stuff. And I'm not a stick in the mud either, because I went to see Aquaman. I loved Aquaman. I was like, this movie is so ridiculous that I am having a very good time with the movie. So, like, I mean, and I'll tell you, the scene was when that octopus. Oh, who's that?
What is that coming from?
Ow.
That me?
That was harsh.
Nope.
That's you, Jason.
Apparently,
you've got a cab driver going by or something, because he's hacking into your frequency.
I will say, I was hugely impressed with Aquaman once I watched it, considering how dumb I thought the movie looked during the trailers.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit, yeah. I mean, but again, I feel like they got that right. I mean, they were just like, James Wan was like,
they did.
I want to make a crazy movie, and it's going to have like octopuses banging on drums and people talking underwater, and you're just going to go with it. People riding seahorses and sharks and all that shit. And like, everyone was just like, oh, but like, we can't have, and he's just like, I'm James Wan, baby. And then, and then, you know, everything that guy makes, he turns to gold. Like, he hasn't made any bad movies, really. I mean, he's got a great track record. And I think James Gunn's kind of the same way. And I don't know what the deal was with Disney hiring him back. I know all the cast from Guardians signed a petition saying that they weren't coming back. Or I know Dave Bautista was very, like, he said he might not even do the third movie.
Yeah.
I will say one thing I heard. Apologies for cutting you off. There was one thing I heard, and there was a guy on YouTube, a podcaster I've followed for a while, John Campia, had mentioned that from when the allegations came out, all the way until he was hired back by Disney, James Gunn said nothing. He did not complain about anything. He did not badmouth Disney. He basically just sat back and like, I apologize for this, and that's it. And he didn't put up a fuss or anything.
Yeah.
And I think had he done so, it would have definitely jeopardized his chances of coming back.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think that yeah, I mean, that's the unwritten rule, right? It's like, you can't say anything bad about the projects you've worked on and that sort of thing. And again, I think that I think that's what you were getting at when you were talking about David Ayer. Yeah, exactly. I mean, Josh Trank did it before, right before the movie opened. He came out and was just like, "This is the movie I made," on Twitter, I think, and then nobody went to see it, and like, he probably lost Fox, like, my guess is probably like $20-30 million.
They also canceled they canceled like a month or two before the movie came out. All of a sudden, it's like, yeah, this is no longer in 3D.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't like, again, it's like, I know certain movies don't turn out the way you want them to, and it's a tough business for sure. And so we definitely don't want to like discredit the process that goes into it. But like my thing with this stuff is that when you have a movie, especially these big Hollywood studios and these big tentpole films, where it's like, okay, you have $200 million. Like, how much of this money are you spending on the script? And if you are spending $20 million on the script, like who's writing it? Like I'm sure you can find other people to even just to run ideas by, to make sure that these things are in check, right? Like I think a lot of these comic book movies, I mean, I know Kevin Smith has been a consultant on a couple, I think, and that sort of stuff. But again, like I just feel like it's and you have to wonder that if Ben Affleck had actually made his Batman movie, I'm sure Kevin Smith would probably be involved in some way, shape, or form to make sure that vision.
Not necessarily, because they were not on good terms when all that went down. It wasn't until Affleck was out of the Batman contention and all
James Silent
they
reboot.
it wasn't until long after that they were able to mend that bridge. So,
okay, I didn't.
I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan. I know that story very, very well. So, gotcha. Smith and Affleck hadn't spoken in over 10 years, I think it was.
Oh, really?
Until Jay and Silent Bob reboot happened.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah. It was, from being as much of a fan as I am, it was a pretty heartwarming story to hear how they reconnected and all. So, but as for why they drifted apart, it's hard to say.
The text messages back and forth.
Yes.
You're saying that the text messages, that was gold.
Yeah, it's a great story. He's told it all over the place.
Well, I know that I just feel like, I mean, this upcoming sequel is going to be very interesting, because I think I do feel like there's some connective tissue. There's a lot of stuff going on at DC right now that's exciting. That is, like, I love the fact they're giving Zack Snyder a chance to finish Justice League. I think that's the right thing to do. I think that he was under a lot of pressure with the tragedy he had with his daughter and stuff like that. Like, I can't overstate that enough. It's crazy that it even happened to him. But again, I think Zack Snyder's a likable guy. I think people like working with him, and I like his vision, and I think he was onto some really cool things. I think he maybe needed a little bit more guidance in a couple areas, but ultimately I think that his films, the unedited versions, are fairly good. And so I'm excited for this, because I think that started something. I don't know where it started. I don't know if it was Zack Snyder. I don't know if it was James Gunn. But obviously, Suicide Squad 2 looks like a lot of fun. The big reveal they just did at Fandom was pretty cool. It's got a ton of people in it. Like, it's gonna do big money. And I have a feeling if it's James Gunn, I think it'll have that kind of like, whimsical but still edgy sort of vibe to it, which I think will be kind of cool. And a bit more comic booky than maybe the gritty version that David Ayer was trying to go for. But again, you look at the success of Wonder Woman 1984 looks pretty good whenever that gets released. And now they're kind of not retconning, but they're just kind of completing this movie in Justice League in a way that can actually sort of correct that mistake. And the same thing happened with and the ssame thing with David Ayer is that the idea being that it'll come out eventually. And it's funny because, we're just to touch on something too, talking about cuts of movies and movies being cut down. I know that Daredevil gets a lot of flack, the movie with Ben Affleck.
Taco Night.
I actually didn't mind that movie. The director's cut is actually pretty good, and it's got all these other subplots, and it's got an extra half hour of footage. And you got to wonder if, like, there was a time that they just basically said, like, Ben Affleck's already done that once, and he's been roasted for Daredevil. I actually don't think it's that bad of a film. I think there's no films, but he got, it's like it was all his fault basically. And then he goes in to do Batman, and he was wary of doing Batman because of this. And then that movie just gets hacked to pieces, like Justice League I'm talking about, gets hacked to pieces as well. And they give Zack Snyder the kick. And as I think as a director as well, I think that's why he walked away. I really do feel that that's probably the reason he did it. And now they're saying, like, they just announced Henry Cavill's coming back on a 3-movie deal, that he'll be open to doing cameos in future DC movie projects. Ben Affleck's coming back. They just signed Michael Keaton to be in the new, like, in the
So that's for the Flash. They're
Flashpoint.
doing a Flashpoint.
Flashpoint.
So you got to wonder, like, you're like, I think there's a conservative effort inside DC right now to kind of make sure that these errors are corrected, where this universe does start to feel a little bit more complete and a little bit more well-rounded. And that, to me, as a movie fan, is exciting, because it's just, like, you never, like, again, like I started off this saying, I'm not a Marvel guy or DC guy. I'm a good movie guy. I just like seeing good, entertaining movies. And sometimes when you see kind of like hodgepodge movies that are not very good, they need to get called out. And I believe they should get called out, because it influences those studios that are controlling all the purse strings to loosen them up a bit and actually make movies that are for the fans, in a way that is respectful of the source material and also as well entertaining. Because the fans shouldn't control. Let me be perfectly clear. The fans should not control all the movies and everything coming out, because then you get to, I mean, who are you going to give it to, right? It's mostly just, but there are things that people agree on, and those are the things that the studios have to pay attention to make sure they're crafting very good films that kind of are again respectful of source material, but also very, very entertaining. And if you have those two things, you'll make money, tons of more money.
Yes.
Okay, I have to get this out before I forget what I'm saying. I don't know. When they originally put out Wonder Woman, or they were saying they were going to do Wonder Woman, it's like, okay, she looked pretty good in Batman versus Superman. You only got a little bit of her, and you got tiny. What was it? No, it was just Batman versus Superman. That was it. And then you get like Wonder Woman coming out. Okay, it could be all right. Gal Gadot did a pretty good job. She kicks ass at the end of the movie. Fine. Posters looked good. The trailers looked pretty good. The movie comes out. The movie's fantastic. It reminded me a lot of Captain America: The First Avenger, the way they basically took 90% of the movie and chunked it into a period piece. Fantastic. So my expectations weren't that high for Wonder Woman. It far exceeded them. Now, they're up there for Wonder Woman 84, but then there's a bunch of things working against it, saying like she walked away from humanity. She basically ignored everything for 100 years. Well, then what's she doing fighting crime and stuff in the 80s? Okay, the movie comes out. No, the movie comes out. The movie's being made. Steve Trevor's coming back. How? The trailer finally comes out. Okay, Pedro Pascal, I love that guy. He's playing this Maxwell Lord guy. Don't know what he does. The movie looks very 80s. The movie looks pretty good. No word of a lie. I don't know if anyone agrees. I doubt they do with me. Some of the worst posters I've ever seen for a superhero movie or any movie in existence. These are just god awful looking posters.
I like the one. I like the rainbow one. Looks cool.
The more recent one where she's flying up, or the initial one where it's just a bunch of colors in her standing.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, the one with all the colors where she's just standing. I love the promotional material for that. I think it would be a big summer movie, right? So,
dude,
it's a total 80s poster though. That's exactly what they're going for. That just exudes 80s.
And I hope I'm wrong about the movie. I think it looks okay, but seen with the trailer with the what the hell's her name turning into a cheetah and
Kristen
Wiig, and I don't know. I hope I'm wrong and the movie is just as fantastic as the first one, but the marketing isn't really working in its favor for me at the moment. And the fact that they've pushed it 3 times now.
Sorry, go ahead.
I know it's COVID. I know it's COVID related, but
I'm going to drop a little spoiler on you. Okay.
Yeah.
Steve Trevor comes back because of Maxwell Lord.
Oh, I know. I've heard the rumors on not what his powers were in the comic, but what his powers are in this movie.
Yeah. And
I'm wondering how, like, if Steve Trevor comes back, obviously he dies in the movie again, or
does he?
Does he? And she's hiding him in the present. I don't know. It's a whole Steve Rogers thing where he's hiding in plain sight while events play out in front of him, Endgame style.
I'm just surprised. I'm just not sure how it's going to fit into the universe as a whole, because after this movie, there's Batman versus Superman and Justice League, and is that going to?
Yeah.
fit. I mean, because you're retconning basically, and the thing with retconning is like I don't mind a little retconning because if it's just a key piece that you need to kind of fit into a spot and it works, great. But once you start retconning a whole bunch of stuff, you start getting this muddled sense. Of like,
it's also like the proposed sequel to Captain Marvel that they're going to do in the 2000s. It's another movie that takes place long before most of the MCU happens because there's 20 years or so that she existed before anyone knew she was around.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You got to be careful, man. As soon as you start kind of playing around with that stuff, it's you get to a point where, well, I mean, look, X-Men did it very successfully in 2 films, and then they overdid it, and then by the end of it, everyone was just like, great, now this series is ruined too. When you've got people that are like, oh, these people are supposed to be, 70 years old or something like that, and you look like Michael Fassbender. I mean, I get it for mutants, right? I get it, but I mean, you are essentially saying that they're old and they're not old, and nobody ages, and it was just as much as I love those movies, I do acknowledge the age thing is a little weird. like in Dark Phoenix is another example. It gets the feeling. The only feeling that kind of saves that movie is Hans Zimmer's score because it's absolutely phenomenal. It's one of the best he's ever written, I think. But I mean, he's written so many, but it's a phenomenal score.
And the train scene.
But there's things in that movie that very, very much feel like it was written and made by committee. Whereas we need Jennifer Lawrence in here, but Jennifer Lawrence was on the end of her contract and wanted out, I guess. Who knows, right? It just seems like things are sort of are just kind of roped into that movie. And again, it just feels like it's not necessarily and that's the biggest thing for me is that same with Suicide Squad. It's like this, it's this pulling things together in a way that isn't a natural fit for the story and therefore eradicates the good things that you had built into the movie in the first place.
Excellent. Well, guys, thank you so much for doing this episode. This has been
okay. Thank you, Benner.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Yeah. I had to get all that stuff off my chest,
Need to grab a cigarette?
Therapeutic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in that case, until our next heated debate, when we find out about Justice League next, the movie Madhouse. This is Rob.
This is James.
And Jason.
And I'm Benner. Thanks for having me again, guys. I appreciate it.
No problem. We'll see y'all later.
Take care.
Bye, guys.
Toodles.
Shut up! It's a man!